Welcome to the playoff edition of Preps Plus Extra. How you doing? I'm Mark Stewart, prep editor of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Joining me is my bracketologist. This week, J.R. Radcliffe, sports editor of Now Newspapers. How you doing this week?
Excellent. Great time of year. I think a lot of us in the media were probably up later than we normally would be on a Friday night waiting for the announcement of the field of 224 teams and the creation of the 8-team geographic pods, which was like 1:30 or 2 a.m. I don't even know. I was getting a little droopy-eyed at that point. And then the next morning we got our matchups. So it's a fun time to cover high school sports. We love the football postseason. It's sort of the highlight moment of the fall sports season. It's great.
Yeah, and it's the only one where, especially with those groupings, where there's that element of drama where it's almost like selection Sunday for the NCAA tournament, where you wonder, okay, most teams know they're in, and they think maybe they know who they're going to be playing with, but you never know until you see those groupings, and then you can start figuring out your seeds and things. So, a ton of teams from the area that made it by, we have different coverage areas, but for Southeast Wisconsin, I counted 51 schools that made the field. And really, D2 has traditionally probably these last few years probably been the stronger division, and this year it's really no different. And I look at this, you called it the bracket of death. Yeah. To start off with, the one that has Homestead, Cedarburg, Germantown, Oshkosh North, Whitefish Bay. I mean, that's a loaded bracket. That might be the strongest. I couldn't imagine a stronger bracket anywhere in the state.
Right. Brookfield Central is one of those programs that isn't having as good a year as maybe they've come to know, but that's still a really good program. Jed Kennedy, the first-year coach, that's the 7th seed in that bracket. I mean, that's the second to worst team by the seeding logic in that bracket. And I'm not saying Central's an upset pick or anything, but that just kind of shows you the depth that we're talking about in that group of 8. And I know Milwaukee area people aren't really familiar with Oshkosh North, but that's an 8-1 team, and their only loss is to Kimberly, who by most accounts is the best team in the state in any division. And so, I mean, that's a team that could get to Madison, and they're the 4th seed. And Whitefish Bay, good program, stuck in the North Shore with a bunch of good programs. They have to travel all the way to Oshkosh to face a team that's that good, and that's the 4-5 matchup. So it's a really, like you said, just totally loaded bracket. You could make a case for any one of those North Shore teams that we were ranking last week to come out. I still think Cedarburg as a dark horse is a very viable candidate to get to Madison, but Homestead and Germantown are going to be the favorites. I mean, that's just, you're looking forward to a level 3 meeting with Homestead and Germantown if that comes to pass, and that's going to be a huge ticket. So there's a lot of storylines right in that little group.
Yeah, and I would have been interested to see how the number 1 seeding, the vote for that, because
what a conversation.
Because and really that shows the value of Homestead's victory over Germantown, because you talked about Brookfield Central, and that being a real solid team. Homestead as number 1 gets to play Milwaukee Madison, which is they're getting better, but it's
in the city school, right?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough chore for Madison to beat Homestead. Whereas with Germantown, they
could get a push.
Yeah, they could get a push from Brookfield Central. You never know. So that's going to be a very interesting bracket to see how it works out. On the other end, you had Germantown, that was the largest Division II school this year. Greendale moves up to Division III, and they're the smallest Division III school. So that's another reason this bracket is going to be pretty strong.
Greendale was Division III last year, go to the state championship game, and now the smallest Division II school just adds to the depth of that D2 bracket. I think it's interesting that Kimberly being the smallest D1 school and Greendale the smallest in D2, I think both of those could wind up winning the bracket, which shows those enrollment numbers don't matter all that much. Other than they could have gone either way. And for a while there, it was looking like even Germantown could wind up in Division I. It took some of the tie-breaking procedures with Kenosha Bradford getting a berth in. That knocked Germantown actually down to Division II, so that was a very important part of the piece of the puzzle as well, because Germantown could very easily be a D1 school at this point. So I actually like Greendale to get all the way to Madison to even maybe win that state championship. It's going to be a tough road to hoe for anybody, but I think the Panthers are undefeated. They've got a more negotiable part of the bracket than a Homestead or Germantown, and I think whether or not, just seeing a matchup like that will just be really interesting. Greendale doesn't get to face those teams during the regular season, so it would be really curious with a lot on the line to see what happens.
Yeah, especially level 3, we could have Waukesha West, Greendale.
Right, great
two teams,
matchup.
Woodland.
Great matchup.
Yeah, Woodland Classic 8 teams rarely butt heads. So that would be something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Shifting gears to Division One. Division One state, two-time Division One state champion Arrowhead. They grabbed a share of the conference Classic 8 title last week, thanks to Catholic Memorial helping them out and getting a win over Waukesha West. So they get a number 1 seed in their portion of the bracket. Muskego's in that part of the bracket. McGuanago's in that part of the bracket. The Classic 8 was really, balanced this year. That's kind of, Lake Country. That's some of those schools are part of the ones you really focus on.
Yep.
What's your take on that portion of the bracket?
I think Arrowhead's playing as well as they've played all year. Their quarterback, Johnny Duranzo, was missing for their 2 league losses against Waukesha West and McGuanago. So I think that's probably something Arrowhead was arguing in the seed meeting, like, hey, we lost 2 really close games. We were missing our junior quarterback, our starting guy, who was, led them in the state championship game last year. So they probably are saying, we're a pretty good team. We might be the best one here. And they get the top seed, having beaten Muskego late in the season. That helped their resume, I'm sure. Muskego, though, comes off a game where they just throttled a very good McGuanago team, had a running clock the entire second half. And their defense really rose to the challenge. After back-to-back weeks of allowing 35 points, their defense totally got on track and completely stopped McGuanago's first string. So they've got to feel like if they get into a rematch with Arrowhead, remember that's a 35-28 Arrowhead win, that they're going to be able to beat them. There's a level 3 matchup that I think a lot of people should be looking at too. So I actually like Arrowhead's chances of getting back to Madison. They'd have to get through Muskego, and they'd have to get through a very good Bayport team at the top of the bracket if chalk holds, because with quarterback Alec Ingold, one of the best players in the state. That's also a tough road to hoe, but I think we could be looking at Arrowhead back at the state championship game. I think that's a very real possibility.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the bracket, from an area perspective, you got Milwaukee Marquette got a number 1 seed in their portion of the bracket, which also included Southeast co-champions Franklin and Oak Creek. And I guess from talking with Marquette coach Jeff Mazurchek, because when I looked at that bracket, I was wondering, well, would maybe one of those Southeast schools get the a number 1 seed? Because the nature of sometimes these meetings is you get a lot of schools from one conference in there.
Look at the North Shore and Oshkosh North, for example.
Right. And sometimes, when in doubt, maybe those coaches lean towards the schools they know more. But Marquette got the number 1 seed there, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I'm really intrigued by Marquette just because I don't, I haven't seen them play a game yet, although I've seen them practice. But 2, just seeing how the greater metro matches up. That league was sort of hard to get a gauge on in terms of how strong it actually is this year. So, you're looking at a potential, well, if they get past Indian Trail,
that's tough.
That's going to be a tough run. You got to go through Indian Trail. You got to go through probably Oak Creek or Franklin again, to see how they do. So that's going to be one of the teams I'm going to be looking at there.
Yeah, level 2 matchup possibility. Oak Creek and Franklin, they're long-time rivals. They shared the Southeast title this year. They were the 2, I think, pretty much clear-cut 2 best teams in that conference. So if they meet again in level 2, you do get this in the playoffs a lot. You'll get these local rivalries just because geographically speaking, they wind up in the same pods of 8. And so it could be, I think that'll be a good matchup. I mean, maybe Franklin beats them this time and gets through to level 3. It's they obviously they went to the state championship game last year, so they've got a lot of playoff experience under their belt. That's as good a program as any.
Yeah. And before we mentioned Catholic Memorial beating Waukesha West, which created a 4-way tie for the Classic 8 title. Let's hear what a couple of their players had to say about the win.
It's definitely the best conference in the state. I mean, we're all really competitive. I mean, there's not a team that struggles, and they're a great team, both offensively and defensively. And we just came out here and just really put on a show, both teams.
Yeah, Coach Young even told us, ever since he's been in the conference in '96, it's the most balanced it's ever been, and we look forward to competition, and we continue to advance.
Well, Catholic Memorial ends up getting placed in Division III, where they'll be one of the favorites, probably looking at a level 3 matchup with Wisconsin Lutheran, which is going to be a fantastic show. But, last week we kind of played the game of, how would we peg the 3 North Shore tri-champions. This week, I think maybe we need to give a stab at the Classic 8, where you got 4 teams, Muskego, Arrowhead, Waukesha West, Catholic Memorial, that tie for the conference title. If you're pegging those 4, who's 1, 2, 3, and 4?
I'm going to give it to Arrowhead. I'll go with the logic that without Duranzo, it's a different story, both against McGuanago and Waukesha West. They're 2 league losses, I think, because those games were both close and they had a backup quarterback in there. I think maybe that having the guy in charge would have made things a little bit different. So I do think Arrowhead is right now the best of the four by a narrow margin. I've seen Waukesha West play, and I'm sure impressed with them. And I think there was a crazy punt play last week that really helped Catholic Memorial's cause. I mean, CMH is, what they do is so impressive to me, CMH, but I still think Waukesha West maybe is a little bit ahead there. And then I got Muskego and CMH, and I feel bad saying that because I think Catholic Memorial, I do pick them to win the Division III state championship. I think they are that good, and they lost to Arrowhead in heartbreaking fashion. I mean, they've been in a lot of close games. They beat Muskego and when Muskego was undefeated, so I feel like I'm doing them a disservice if I put them fourth, but just maybe by nature of enrollment numbers and knowing maybe the war of attrition that is the playoffs, those other three teams could potentially have a little bit more going for them. I expect all four of those teams to make level 3, though. This is going to be a really fun ride for the Classic 8.
Yeah, and real quick, I guess I'll go Arrowhead, Catholic Memorial, Muskego, and West. And West was that was a hard 4 for me to put, but just, I think Memorial's played. When you look at all those teams, they beat Muskego, they almost beat Arrowhead. I just went with them as I thought they were if I had to pick a number 2, that was the one. But fortunately, they, I won't say they don't have to play each other anymore because we don't know.
How did Muskego well?
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see what happens here. We're going to level 1 of the football playoffs this week. Next week we'll talk about level 2. Till then, I'm Mark Stewart. This is J.R. Radcliffe. Oh, and we got to give the Preps Plus plug. For more Preps Plus action, watch me and Lance Allen every Sunday night on TMJ4. Take care.